Okay. Call a meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. I do want to make a comment. Right now, there's a valiant group of about 60 firefighters with 7 pieces of apparatus fighting a challenging fire at 1200 Pacific, a 4-story wood frame apartment building that is severely damaged. The fire has proven really challenging. Right now, we've had a couple of members of council that have visited the site and have spoken with firefighters to give them our best as they fight this challenging fire. There's about 100 residents appear to be displaced. We've got 2 transit buses on the scene to transport them to a reception center that's been set up by our Emergency Social Services Program. The reception center is at Pine Tree Community Center at 1260 Pine Tree, right across from Lafarge Lake. Anybody who's watching who has family members and trying to reach them, that may be where they are. Some more information will be posted to the city website as it becomes available. We wish, on behalf of council, wish the very best to the displaced residents of this building, that they may be reconnected with their family members and their pets. I had a cat in my hands a few minutes ago. It's proving to be this is a very devastating moment for perhaps 60 families, and so our very best to them. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item on this evening's agenda is the minutes of the regular council meeting held on Monday, February 2nd. Recommendation to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Marsden. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is minutes of the Coquitlam 125th Anniversary Steering Task Force meeting of Wednesday, January 14th. Recommendation to receive those minutes.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 is minutes of the Coquitlam 125th Anniversary Steering Task Force meeting of Wednesday, February 4th. Recommendation to receive those minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Towner. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Arising out of.
We have 2 items of business arising out of that committee's meeting. The first concerns a sanctioning process for 125th anniversary event, Spirit Grant Applications Communications. The recommendation from the committee is that the sanctioning process for the 125th anniversary activities be approved.
Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Reid. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Second item of business concerns the committee's, the task force's, 2015 work plan. The recommendations that the Coquitlam 125th Anniversary Steering Task Force work plan be approved.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Asmundson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Our next item, item 4, concerns the Evergreen Line Corridor and the City Enhancement Plan update. We have introductory comments by the General Manager of Strategic Initiatives, followed by a presentation by the Director of Strategic Projects. The staff recommendation is that Council support the North Road Corridor Enhancement Plan as developed to date in coordination with the City of Burnaby for further refinement and report back to Council. Support the Clark Road Corridor Enhancement Plan as developed to date for further refinement and report back to Council. And endorse the final accent lighting plan as proposed for Pine Tree Way, see attachment C of the report, in order to enable project tendering at this time.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor O'Neill. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
We do have a presentation to go in conjunction with that. and we did have some.
Yes.
We did have some introductory comments by the General Manager, but we can skip by that and go straight to the presentation.
Well, no, it just shows the Council's enthusiasm for this project and for this wonderful work that you've undertaken. We don't need to be convinced, but we'd like you to present to the residents of Coquitlam, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. You can hear me okay? Yeah. So in terms of the Evergreen Line corridor, we did want to go through this, give an opportunity to share some of the concepts that we've developed for the corridor with the public, as well as go over those with council. So just, I will go rather quickly, I think, because it is also posted on our website, and you know, it is in the council agenda for today. So there is kind of a long background of reporting out on approvals. What we're looking for today is the approval of the accent lighting plan for Pine Tree Way. In terms of Pine Tree Way, there's a number of focus areas along the corridor. The first one that I'll touch on is the linear plaza area just south of Guildford, which includes something called a shimmer stream, as well as accent lighting that is coming up from below in proposed seating up onto the lower side of the guideway to create that shimmer stream effect as represented in this slide. Also, there's further south, there's a feature called the branches, where lighting will be projected onto the branches in the upward and downward direction to give some shadows and a neat effect. Also, there was an opportunity identified to project onto the guideway at the library, in front of the library, and so there's proposed to be some images that would project this time. One of the things to note is that TransLink, we are working with TransLink on this, and we do need their concurrence relative to what we project on it, and so we are in discussion with them with respect to that. South of that is something called the Pines. It's adjacent to the Coquitlam Center Mall in a widened area, and it provides an opportunity for seating, and you can see there the proposal is to have some accent lighting underneath, shining downward onto the ground from underneath the seating, so not on the ground. Also along the guideway on Pine Tree Way, it's proposed to have columns that are able to light up, and they will be sensing the movement of the trains coming and going along the corridor, and lighting up the columns as that activity occurs. This is an image of outside of, I guess, Rogers Arena, where similar type lighting is used on columns. And then just a reminder relative to the two gateway features on Pine Tree Way, both at the north and south end, a lighted column that is intended to have bark around it in terms of a bark effect, and to respond to activity on the corridor. That one, the image there is in front of City Hall. The Pine Tree Way improvement works are $14 million, and there's increased operating costs anticipated on annual basis of $180,000. For North Road, Clark Road, the corridor concepts, a lot of work has already been done and previous reporting to council and agreements made with both TransLink and the City of Burnaby, as well as the province, relative to getting some of these works done. We have done some additional work to develop concepts for the corridor, and we are looking for council support in terms of what's been developed to date for the special accent features, and then in terms of moving forward, we would refine those and report back again on them. So the concepts for the concept for North Road is turns to its history as a people and goods movement corridor, and based on its orientation on a north-south tangent, as shown on the right side of this slide. There's a concept of having navigation, travel, movement, and the night sky as the theme for the North Road corridor. In terms of expressing that theme, how can we do that? So our consultant team, ISL, and our lighting consultant looked at ways that could be expressed, and so one of those is gateway features. One at the south end here is illustrated just south of Gatineau. It's proposed to be in the median, and is intended to be a north compass type feature, lighting feature that's changeable. That accent lighting can change in color. Then also it was identified that this is a key point to connect through to the low heat station in Burnaby. While it's in Burnaby, it's just across the street, so to speak, and it would be ideal to have some sort of a plaza area in this with redevelopment as it occurs in the future. So this notion, and that provide an opportunity to celebrate some of the multicultural opportunity to celebrate multiculturalism. But in terms of this, it's something that we can't achieve for opening day, and it is recommended that we refer this to the Coquitlam low-heat neighborhood planning process so that can be further explored as an opportunity in this area. And then on the north end of North Road, where it joins Clark Road, there's a concept to also have a compass North Star type of plaza area. It's located, hopefully, where the star is here. There's a triangular piece of property. It's the intersection of North Road and Clark Road. And to have that as a lighted feature, as well as an opportunity to be able to be kind of climbable, and an opportunity to expand once land is available to the city through redevelopment of those lands in the future, so subject to that redevelopment. There's an opportunity to create a plaza area where people can linger and gather and climb on the feature. This again it's shown in white, but it is changeable, and LED lighting, energy efficient lighting. And then in terms of the guideway along North Road and Clark Road, there's an opportunity to light the guideway, and the concept here is supporting that North Star effect is to have brightened areas and then gradually fading along the corridor from nodal highlight areas as well. Through the nighttime, you see on the right-hand side there is to gradually change the color of this star effect through the night so that it appears differently in the evening to what it might occur in the morning time. And this is how that might look in terms of, this is supposed to represent a graduation of brightness as it goes to a center point. And there's also, and then it fades off again. And then also you can see that there's an opportunity to, in select locations, also light up the underside of the guideway. In terms of along the corridor, we're also looking at ways that we can provide street markers and wayfinding along the corridor, and there's a number of concepts being considered for that. Other corridor features is there's a few locations where curb bulges can be introduced because there's a parking lane already beyond that, or a bus stop. And this is an example proposed to be implemented as a curb bulge at Foster. And one of a couple of things that the curb bulges do is allow for shortened crossing distances and more efficient intersections. And so there's a number of benefits to those. We're also looking at streetlight banners and tree planting in select locations. So then in terms of, here's a rendering of what the median might look like with enhanced plantings and some trellis work, as well as just pointing out the lighting that can be built into the guideway. Here's an opening day look of what North Road might look like. And then as we see redevelopment occurring along the corridor, there's an opportunity to acquire more road dedication and to provide widened sidewalks and additional tree planting along the corridor, and to create this kind of a corridor that looks more like this in the future. So for Clark Road, the theme that was developed for that was, again, turning to its history and kind of a long-term corridor of transportation and goods movement as well, but as well as a history of farming. So the corridor theme that was developed by our consultants was an evolution of travel along the corridor, and with the arrival of the SkyTrain and kind of turning back to feet and bikes and that kind of thing in terms of an evolution, the multimodal. So how do we do that? How do we create it? Just ways to integrate it and celebrate the transit exchange and the guideway and pedestrian and cycling. There's various themes as to how we can do that. And here's just a few images of, just to picture in our mind's eye. I guess here's the Coquitlam Plaza, the Coquitlam station that's going to be built by the province, or is well underway. And one of the things with the station is there is intended to be interior and exterior pieces of public art at the station. The city is also proposing, staff are also proposing to incorporate some mosaics at each of the stations in Coquitlam, including the Coquitlam station. Council will recall that there was a previous study done between a joint study, the Coquitlam and TransLink Commission, to look at, well, what might a transit exchange look like in the future? Well, we just saw the opening day one, the picture, the graphics that we were just looking at. This is what it could look like in the future with build-out and integration of the transit network into, kind of a change pattern around the station. Just so Council's aware, there's a lot of different partners, if you will, in terms of doing work along the Clark Road segment. So just to orientate everybody, the Smith is here, this is Clark Road, the Burquitlam Station, and Como Lake, so north is to the right. Just in terms of that, the opening day bus circulation is around the station, and the province is doing all the green things on this map, including a median and a left turn lane at Como Lake and Clark. Boza Safeway is developing this parcel, so they're doing the gold in terms of frontage improvements. The city has already commissioned this work, the blue turning lanes here and there and some sidewalk and things. What was identified was there was a shortfall between, kind of in these crosshatch zones, between the station and Smith and between the station and the Boza Safeway development with the Burquitlam Plaza not developing yet. So, when we get large platoons of pedestrians coming out of the station for opening day, it wouldn't be that good that they, end up on a tiny little narrow sidewalk. So we have identified a desire to improve that to a, 3-meter wide sidewalk for opening day with, kind of a 1.5 meter wide furnishing zone. And so we are approaching the property owner to acquire right-of-way for that. We are also, and I'll talk about it a little bit more relative to the tunnel portal, this is an area we're also exploring with the province. So this is just, again, just highlighting the same sort of thing in these areas, just in a different format. There's an opportunity to do a gateway feature at Como Lake and Clark, the southeast corner, really on the frontage of the Boza Safeway development. And to have a feature that represents, a statement of Clark Road, and with some embossing in the sidewalk to represent a map of the area. And this is what that might look like at night, and it has an opportunity to have lighting that moves. One of the things with lighting is we really need to be careful is do our detailed design with engineering and traffic operations so that we make sure we're not creating any confusion for the traveling motorists. So we need to do that in terms of the detail as we move forward. And then, looking at expressing some of those things in the furnishings, as I was mentioning, and some pedestrian scale type markers for pedestrian traffic. Also not for opening day, but in the longer term, there's the guideway. Here's the Burquitlam Station again, and here's the guideway going across Clark Road. This area presents itself with an area that it's encumbered by the guideway, but it provides an opportunity to create some sort of public open plaza space with redevelopment of lands, not planned for opening day. Just moving north of Como Lake then, the multi-use pathway is proposed to make use of the South Tunnel portal lands that aren't being used by the guideway. And this just schematically represents that for going from Como Lake to Kemsley, and then here's a plan view of the same and a little bit of a rendering of what that might look like. Proposed to be street lights and pedestrian scale lighting along here, as well as tree planting. We're also exploring the opportunity to provide a community information sign on the northwest corner of Como Lake and Clark. Again, accent lighting, a similar theme, continuation of the theme from North Road with slight variations to that. One of the notional ideas that we've just recently advanced to TransLink to consider, because they control what we put on their structure, the guideway, was this kind of putting paint on their structure, and their initial reaction to it was not real positive, so they don't like anything on the structure that would obstruct observing cracks and that kind of thing. But this is you can put kind of a sparkly finish on the surface of concrete and shine light on it, and it gives a neat effect. But so we're still working on that, I guess. In terms of costs for North Road and Clark Road, the city's budget costs $7.6 million. In total, when you look at some of the other works that are going on by the province, the median works and things, we estimate it to be on the order of $10 million for that work. So in terms of next steps, if council sees fit, we would like to tender the Pine Tree Way works at this time for spring, type start of construction. And then with respect to North Road and Clark Road, we are engaging, providing an opportunity for the public to provide input. We've attended the last couple of public information meetings with respect to the Coquitlam low heat neighborhood plan, and we also have information on our website. And we do intend to report back to council with further refinements so that we can move forward on the North Road, Clark Road corridor improvements as well.
I don't have to tell you how persuasive you were. We voted for that already. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to add just a couple of quick comments here that I was really pleased to see how this vision for the enhancements of the gateway features and the guideway enhancements complements the feeling, the theme that the Evergreen Line Public Art Task Force selected for the Coquitlam station. So it's really good to see that those are sort of fitting hand in glove. It's very important. And overall, just how this really will improve the look and the feel of a vital artery. Big changes coming into the Coquitlam area. I'm speaking specifically now about the Clark North Road things, and big changes coming to the Coquitlam area. And it's not just the population growth, it's not just the new transportation. We can now say that there's going to be a real significant enhancement of the look and feel of this important area. So thanks.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
You have our attention.
Our next item, item 5, concerns a temporary use permit application to allow the sale of motor vehicles under 4,500 kilograms at 2954 Pheasant Street. Prior to reading the staff recommendation, I would invite the mayor to call for speakers.
Indeed, this is a development variance permit application. Are there any speakers to this item? Are there any speakers to this item? I see some curiosity. There you go. We'll need your name and address for the record.
Yes, it is. Number 12954 Pheasant Street.
And your name?
I'm just requesting another 3-year period for me to wind down my business. Because in the past, my projection of being finished at this point was simply overrun by just the insufficient completion of my business. They want to know your name. Oh, yeah. Gary Popo.
There we go.
Sorry.
You don't have to repeat the other stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say, really. Just want an extension of 3 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other speakers to this item? Are there any other speakers to this item? Third and final time. Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. The staff recommendation is...
Sorry. Go ahead. Staff
recommendations that council approve a temporary use permit for 2954 Pheasant Street and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute it.
I'll move.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I'm just wondering if the city's received any concerns from the community surrounding this area.
If we had received responses, we would have circulated them to council.
So nothing? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we gather we don't have any negatives on this one?
Nope.
Okay. It's a temporary use permit. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Go, sir.
Next item, item 6, concerns a development variance permit authorization related to lot width at 1400 and 1404 Haversley Avenue. Prior to reading the staff recommendation, I would invite the mayor to call for speakers.
Once again, a development variance permit. Are there any speakers to this item? 1400 and 1404 Haversley. Are there any speakers to this item? Third and final time. Are there any speakers to this item? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. The staff recommendation is that Council approve the signing and sealing of this DVP for 1400 and 1404 Haversley, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute it.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor O'Neill. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 7 is for opposed highway dedication cancellation adjacent to 1838 and 1880 Lemax Avenue, 579 Ascot, 584 Linton Streets. This is bylaw number 4478. Staff recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Highway Dedication Cancellation Bylaw 4478. Direct that bylaw number 4478 be advertised in accordance with the requirements of the Community Charter. 3, direct the intention of sale of the subject lands created by the council dedication to be advertised in accordance with the requirements of the Charter. Pending approval of Bylaw 4478, authorize the sale of the subject lands created by the council highway dedication located to the adjacent addresses on Lemax, Ascot, and Linton Street to the respective owners of these properties or their assignees at a purchase price of $25.60 per square foot of land area plus applicable taxes and closing costs. 5, authorize staff to negotiate the contract of purchase and sale with the purchasers in a form and with content acceptable to the city solicitor. And finally, that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and execute these agreements.
Moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you very much. On this one here, we have 2 property owners purchasing and one in the middle not purchasing. And it just seems to me the one person that's not purchasing is going to have free use of this land, or is the person that's subdividing those lots, could they purchase this land and add it into their parcel? It just seems kind of someone's getting maybe land for continual use for free, and how do we deal with that? So,
through your worship,
Mr. Stanisha.
The city's position on lane closures is that we make the lane available to all of the adjacent property owners, and it's their choice whether they wish to purchase the lane or not. In this case, lot number 6, remainder number 6 lot, the one in the middle, chose not to, and therefore the developer chose to pick up that portion of the lane.
they did pick up that portion?
Yes, correct.
Okay, I didn't see that in the report. Sorry, I missed it. Thank you.
Okay. So there's no land unaccounted for.
That's correct. All of the land will be sold.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Okay, that was the first part of my question. The second part is, do we have the ability to choose who we want to sell to? I'm concerned because this is going to end up with a sort of a jug, property line, as opposed to just a straight line down. And we're also going to end up with potentially one of the new properties from 1838 that's going to have this bulge in the middle. And I'm just wondering, would it not make more sense to just choose the developer that's interested, or the owner that's interested? That's the one who's going to be, developing 1838 Lemax, and just sell him the entire easement, thus getting a straight line down between the backyards.
Your Worship,
Mr. McIntyre.
I'll try to respond to that, and if Mr. Stanisha has anything further, he can certainly jump in. Yes, on one hand, ideally you like to have your property lines straight and predictable from corner to corner. That doesn't always happen. In this case here, I think it was proposed is to add, it would be a jog in the backyard of one of the lots. That would probably be defined by landscaping and probably fencing in time, so it would be a little bit of an oddity, but I think it would be taken into account. As Perry explained through these processes, we take real efforts to contact the abutting property owners and provide them that opportunity. Because in some cases, particularly with these unopened road and lane allowances, people have been utilizing them for many, many years, maintaining them, and so obviously we want to see there's not a way to formalize that sort of occupancy. In this case here, it's a little less than ideal, but I think on the other hand, if it had been left sort of floating out there, that probably would not be an ideal situation either. So this is why staff are recommending this. We think it's the best solution for what the property owners have expressed an interest in.
So in 20 years or 30 years, we'll look back at this sort of weird jog and sort of say it's just one of those incidents of history that at the time this is how it was created.
Much the same way we muse now about how the lane was started in dedications many decades ago, then a further walkway was anticipated. Not everything materializes as you might initially plan.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The motion is a cancellation of a highway dedication. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The next item, item 8, pertains to a conservation permit at 4104 Cedar Drive, Lot B, 4100 Cedar Drive, 1189, 1177, 1165, 1153 Fremont Street, and 1156 Devon Avenue. Staff recommendation is that Council authorize the issuance of this conservation permit with conditions to One World Farms for the above noted addresses.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Asmundson. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, I'm just wondering, and I'm looking through the history of the site here, and it looks like there's still areas that don't have fill. Some are just requiring a top-up through settling. Is that correct? We're not going into new areas. This is just areas that currently have fill on them.
Yes, that's correct.
And that's looking through the middle. I guess that's a habitat area or wetlands. That's sort of this sort of piece right in the center here.
Yes, that's correct, and we have erosion sediment control plan in place to protect that.
So it's all environmentally protected around that.
Yes.
The fill that's coming in. Because I note in the report that it says that this is going to be used for agricultural purposes initially. Is there a spec on that fill, or it's just not going to be sort of stuff that's been dug out of an excavation somewhere? There is a standard for a fill that's being placed in this area?
Yes, there is. It also has to be sourced from reputable sources, and it's coming from the Tri-Cities area.
And does that include screening for invasive species? Because I note that this is because of its proximity to the Deboville Slough. I know that the Friends of the Deboville Slough have been very active in working on eradication of invasive species and bringing new fill into that site. Is that something that will be monitored or something that we can check for before that fill is brought in?
Yes, good question. I'm just thinking of the soil screening procedures. My understanding is that a lot of the fill that's brought in is to raise the level to the floodplain elevation. If there is a need for growing medium being brought in, then that would be appropriate to the site as well.
Okay. And my final question is the Fremont Street right-of-way. There's been a lot of discussion about Fremont, and when the day comes to build that corridor, I gather we show it as one potential is the route coming directly to the west of this property. Are there other options if this fill continues and proceeds? Are we locking ourselves into only one option on Fremont?
With this permit, there's no fill to be placed in the right-of-way, of course, and we're actually fixing an issue that was there was some other authorized fill put in there a few years ago. So the applicant is offering to clear that as a part of it. And if there's a subdivision that comes forward through the ALC on this, there'd be additional dedication for that right-of-way. Now, in terms of any new roads, given that these properties are in the ALR, Agricultural Land Reserve, that's something that the Agricultural Land Commission would have to look at for any approvals for a new road that bisects agricultural land. So whatever option is brought forward, I think the ultimate idea here is a future equestrian neighborhood with access to lots. That private access road would also have to get that approved from the ALC.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You, Councillor Towner.
I just have a question concerning attachment 4.14, the conservation permit conditions. It just jumped out at me, so I thought I'd bring it up. It's, I think, just wording. But it says the owner acknowledges that should any performance issues or problems arise at any time in relation to this permit, city staff has the authority under the conservation bylaw to suspend or revoke the permit until the problems are remedied. And I'm just wondering if it should say has the authority under the conservation bylaw to suspend the permit until the problems are remedied or revoke the permit. It's just a minor thing, but it jumped out at me and I couldn't resist asking about it.
Is it possible to revoke a permit temporarily?
Because once it's revoked, it's revoked. That's what I...
Mr. McIntyre. Oh, I can see the look on his face.
No, thank you, Worship. I'm chuckling because our former development services manager sitting immediately to my right here has some direct knowledge of this, and perhaps Raul can help out. I believe actually he had started with this property some years ago. This is a clause or a term that's been put in the conservation permit. It's a little bit of a heavy hammer, that if work is undertaken is not consistent with the permit, say someone starts filling an area they're not supposed to, they're bringing in unacceptable material, if something's going awry, it gives us that ability to halt the work at that time.
Okay, I guess it seems the question might be, it seems to permit us to revoke the permit, period, or to temporarily suspend it.
Until the problems are remedied.
The intention would be to suspend it till the work is corrected, until any problems are corrected.
Okay. Or revoke it permanently if that was necessary.
Like I said, in the worst case scenario, if it needed to be revoked, it could be revoked.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we haven't faced that sort of scenario yet.
Thank you.
Good. Councillor O'Neill. Oh, sorry. Oops.
Oh, just a quick follow-up. In the bylaw itself, there's a series of scenarios that that can be followed by the city if there's a need to suspend the permit. There could be notice given, or if it's a dangerous situation, it could be an immediate revocation of that permit. There could be a suspension, and if the approving authority says, okay, this isn't working, then go to council and get council to revoke it, or ask council to consider revoking it. So there's a whole series of provisions here in the bylaw for that. Cover those scenarios.
Okay. Looks like our schedule might need an edit. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you. Just recalling our discussions we had on the Fremont Street connector and the Fremont connector, and I think this was answered in response to Councillor Hodges' question, but it's my understanding and my recollection that all of the options presented by Port Coquitlam for the different routes for the Fremont connector, of course, just deal with roads inside of Port Coquitlam. And our response to those options has now gone to Port Coquitlam, and none of them, as I recall, none of those responses had any route going through this property, as I recall it. Is that right, Mr. Mayor?
On the Fremont corridor, so as we stayed at Fremont.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got two staff members nodding. Mr. Jones.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the Fremont Street right-of-way is the right-of-way that we'll be protecting as part of this conservation permit. I was just mentioning that any road put in the ALR requires the approval of the ALC, whether it's a private road for that equestrian, the planned equestrian.
Right, but we haven't responded to Port Coquitlam's request for us to respond to their options with any proposed route that would go through this property. And we're not responding. We're saying that basically, if it does take a Devon Road route, that as soon as it hits the bottom of the property, yes, we've responded. I just wanted to make sure that none of our responses has said that it go, just to clear for the public and to make sure, because I didn't think the question was answered specifically enough from Councillor Hodges' question, so I wanted none of our responses, none of our preferred routes has any bisects this property.
That is absolutely correct, okay. What you just said.
Thank you. Now the second thing has to do with how the land, how the dirt would get to this area. So I remember I got a load of dirt from my backyard. It's 10 cubic yards is about a truckload, right? And so cubic yards about a cubic meter, and we got 15,000 cubic meters coming in. That's 1,500 truckloads of dirt that would be coming in here. And do we know where it's coming from and what route it's going to take, and is it going to cause a lot of problems along the route that's going to be taking, and should we work to minimize all the 1,500 trucks that are going to be coming in here with this extra dirt? Any plans? Mr. Mayor, do you know of any plans for that, or do you think the staff does?
They're a water course, so it's not necessarily the case that it'll come by truck.
Okay, good. Oh, yeah, right. Barging, right. So I don't know if there's any plans on that.
Mr. Johansson.
Yes, through to Councillor O'Neill. Yes, very good question. Yeah, 10 cubic meters per truck and pup, which is the truck and then the tandem vehicle in the back. That equates to about 1,500 truckloads over the space of a calendar year. And well, we've noted in the report that those trucks would be using Victoria, which is an arterial street to access the site, which Victoria connects to a designated truck route, Coast Meridian Road. Just to put that amount of trucks in perspective with the whole project, which has been underway since 2011, to date, about 142,000 cubic meters of fill have been imported to the site in order to bring it up to that 4.58 meter ALC floodplain level, and that's about 14,250 trucks. So this amount of 1,500 trucks, yes, it is a lot, but relative to the previous operations, it's about, like you said, 10%. And there's a number of conditions where there needs to be flagged persons and proper traffic control for those trucks coming along Victoria, which is also being used for trucks servicing construction activity in Pardon Creek area and Smiling Creek.
Very busy road. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I'll add one question. I note that under 12 of schedule attachment 4, rather, clause 12, the last sentence, that the Beauville Slough parking lot and park trail is to be kept open at all times. I assume that same clause was in last time we did that, but the contractor moving the fill didn't keep it open. In fact, there was a couple of complaints, and I found it myself, having visited the site, that they had closed the parking lot because they felt it was just easier for their trucks to not have to navigate around any motor vehicles that were using the park at the time, so they closed the park. I assume that we're going to be tougher on them, or I know we were tough on them at that instant, but I want to make certain that they understand that that's a non-starter.
Yes, through to your worship, we will make sure that condition is honored.
Thank you.
And we'll monitor it as well.
Appreciate it. Okay. The question is a conservation permit. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The next item, item 9, pertains to Development Procedures Bylaw Amendment Bylaw. This is Bylaw 4534. Staff recommendations that Council give first, second, and third readings to Development Procedures Amendment Bylaw number 4534.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reid. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, so I take it by the fact that this is for first, second, and third reading, this is not the type of bylaw that goes for any public hearing. And so I'm just, I'm a little curious about what sort of mechanism we have to get feedback from the people that this would affect the most. Some maybe developers, a UDI, or maybe it's not deemed significant enough, but just so it's not just a total in-house thing. Is there any procedure, Mr. Mayor, for seeking feedback from outside of City Hall on this thing?
I think Mr. McIntyre is going to explain the kind of dialogue we've had already on this subject. Mr. McIntyre?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The direct answer is no. You're quite correct, Councillor O'Neill. It's not the type of bylaw that goes through the public hearing process or consultation per se. We tend to do these more of a housekeeping updates to the Development Approval Procedures Bylaw over time. I think the bylaw was first adopted back in 2009. over the last number of years, we've noted there's been some things either it's fallen out of date or it's inconsistent with what's good practice. So we bring these forward as part of I guess good management and maintenance of the bylaws. I don't think there's anything here that's directly problematic or would cause concern with applications and their processing. If anything, it gives a little bit of more flexibility and timeliness to these applications.
Okay. Well, maybe there's just one thing you can explain to me then, because I actually tried to connect the words on page 1 with the following pages, and I didn't quite understand in your background note on page 1 there, the second last line of that big paragraph, third and second last line says, in addition, staff are requesting that authorization for a relatively new development permit area ... be delegated to staff. What exactly do you mean by a relatively new development permit area, and what does that refer to? Because I didn't see those exact words anywhere else, or maybe I missed it.
Mr. Jones. Through your worship to Councillor O'Neill. Excellent question. This relatively new development permit area is the northern boundary of the Parkland Creek Neighborhood Plan area. For wildfire interface development permit area was brought in with the Parkland Creek Neighborhood Plan because we're anticipating that there's going to be urban development up against urban wildland interface, specifically Burke Mountain Park and a development reserve. So we need to bring in some guidelines to ensure that development that is up against that interface is developed in a way that's...
So that entire sentence isn't about two things. It's about the wildfire risk interface.
Yes.
Because the way it read to me, it was about not only a wildfire risk management interface area, but also a relatively new development permit area. I didn't know what that was or what you're talking about, but now I understand. I'm pretty literal when I read things, and this confused me. I have the answer now. Thank you.
Okay. Motion is a bylaw amendment, first 3 readings. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item, item 10, pertains to the Tri-Cities Healthier Communities Partnership. Staff recommendations that Council authorize Council and staff participation on the Tri-Cities Healthier Communities Partnership Committee and offer administrative support to the committee once every 5 years.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Zerillo. Councillor O'Neill.
Well, this is a little bit of clarification again. On page 2, TCHCP priorities, they've approved the following priorities. The role of Eagle Ridge Hospital in the community. What about the role? A priority to clarify the role, a priority to increase the role, a priority to decrease the role. You can't just put out. And then again, for the fourth one, resources and services for seniors. To improve it, decrease it, clarify it, get rid of it. So what exactly do we mean there? So in the other ones, service improvement, very clear, and increasing access, very clear. So 1 and 3 are clear, 2 and 4 are not clear. What do you mean, Mr. Mayor?
I didn't write it.
Well, I'm not supposed to directly talk to those guys, so I have to talk to you.
Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Those are some good questions. I don't have an immediate response to them. I think, and there were some council members that attended the January 28th preliminary discussion meeting, so if those present have a better take on this than I do, but I think what they want to do is, and there's been this discussion before in the community, just what, we're fortunate up northeast to have the Eagle Ridge Hospital, but it's a full-service hospital. There's building space within the hospital is not utilized. So I think it was more that sort of broader discussion around the hospital and its future and serving the northeast municipalities. Perhaps if one of the council members that was at that meeting can add comments as well, that'd be appreciated.
Okay, we're going to go to Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. Yeah. Basically, it was improving services and resources for seniors. I think that was fairly straightforward. And then the role of Eagle Ridge Hospital in the community. There's interest in trying to expand the role to increase the number of the types of operations that they can do and that sort of thing. So it's all about improving and increasing, as far as I remember.
That's great, but I thought it was significant that the words improvement and increasing were used in number 1 and 3 and weren't used in 2 and 4. So I thought maybe something else is meant, or else it would have been included as well in 2 and 4.
Well, we did contemplate cutting services for seniors, but we decided against that. I'm joking.
I know you are, but then why was it reported differently? It's strange, and we can't leave things like this to chance. We should be as specific as we can, and when we can be. And it's the old editor in me, I guess, but this sort of thing can open the door to confusion, and you wonder why things don't get done when they should get done. And this is the sort of thing that contributes to that lack of precision in the declaration of what we intend to do. I have another question as well, Mr. Mayor, and it has to do with the support of the two organizations that we haven't, the school district and Fraser Health, where this support has not yet been confirmed. I think we're assuming that we will get their support, and therefore the rotation can be. There's some minor costs. Are they going to contribute to the costs? And if it's such a minor thing, but if they don't participate, does this affect us going forward in any way?
Mr. McIntyre.
Your Worship, we noted that, and I think this came from Port Moody, the City of Port Moody's endorsement of the of involvement in this initiative. We felt that was a fair approach, and so we've incorporated that as part of our recommendation. Now, planning staff work quite closely with the City Clerk's Department, because they would be the other area that would be supporting this this initiative. It became our turn to be the host municipality. I know in talking with my staff that were more directly involved, the way they explained it to me was this enables the project to get up and underway. Port Coquitlam has offered this coming year to be the host. There would still be the chance for others, including the City of Coquitlam, to step forward and fulfill our role during that rotation. At the end of the day, if those other two agencies named didn't see it as their priority to be a host organization, I guess we'd have to revisit the whole initiative, but that was not our expectation.
But Port Coquitlam agreed to host it every 3 years, so they're obviously agreeing to go ahead without the participation of school district and Fraser Health. Are we essentially agreeing to do that as well? But if, because we say every 5 years in recommendations. So does that mean that if they don't go ahead, that we're just going to, there's going to be a bit of a void? If we go ahead but they don't join in, is there going to be a bit of a void here somehow? And like if we're agreeing once every 5 years, and there's only 3 partners, that's just a little bit of confusion there. That's all.
Okay. Well, normally our clerk services step in at that point. So, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe the fact that POCO has offered to do the first year gives some time for those decisions and determinations to be made. You know, there's always a question of who decides first and how these things get sorted. I would say there's a couple options there. One, we're already working in a series of committees with the City of Port Coquitlam and Port Moody on a rotational basis, and this would fit in to be a third of 3 if we did indeed land on only 3. However, I would also suggest that if the school board or Eagle Ridge Hospital, Fraser Health, I guess, was unable or unwilling to participate, we can look at things other than providing committee support, that they would provide financial support to the amount required to provide committee support, if you see what I mean. That they would provide a money grant rather than a staff grant. So
Fraser Health and school district would provide money?
As the other partners who would be on the 5-year cycle, if they chose not to provide a staff support position. So I think as we work through the first year, and the City of Port Coquitlam has graciously offered to go first, it gives us time to solidify where we're going to land on a go-forward basis. I agree with Plan Development's proposal that we join with Port Moody to do it on a every 5-year basis, because I think if the organizations such as the school board and Eagle Ridge Hospital deem this to be important, they can help show that by providing support at the same level of everyone else. And
excellent. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marsden.
Just to clarify as well, Councillor Wilson and I did attend the January meeting, and all of the parties indicated here were present around the table. The question came down to the administration support. So, again, being in just one meeting thus far, certainly the group is engaged and wanted to ensure that we deliver at a high level. In terms of the role of Eagle Ridge Hospital in the community, I think that comes down to the recently completed master site plan and how Fraser Health is going to go forward there. So all those pieces will start to come in, and as we move forward with the work plan, I think we would certainly ensure that we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's to satisfy Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Well, I don't mind if you want to start on it, but I think there should be a date by which we find out if School District 43 and Fraser Health are joining in, because if there's not, there's no sense the 3 cities meeting without the whole package. And, excuse me? School District 43 and Fraser Health are in for sure, and they're providing money and administrative support. So I'd like to hear about that part. So there should be a date by which we should know their decisions, and if they're going to contribute, I'm happy with it, and if they're not, I'm not.
I can commit that staff will undertake to follow up on that. We've kept a close eye on it, and we need to do that just for planning purposes, so we'll undertake to keep that in mind.
Well, the motion does appear to have been worded, the staff recommendation does appear to have been worded with that in mind, that clearly we're offering once every 5 years. If that's not going to work, it comes back to council, I suspect.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
We're not going to do that. Item 11 concerns a proposed parkland management framework. The recommendation from staff is that Council endorse the parkland management framework described in Attachment 3 of the report, and the staff be directed to initiate the necessary OCP bylaw amendment and rezoning applications for candidate parks listed under Parkland Level 1 and prepare park dedication bylaws for candidate parks listed under Parkland Level 2 as per Attachment 3 of the report, and that staff undertake a public information process on the proposed framework as part of these bylaws.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reid. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I've had a few calls from community members about this, and I think a lot of it probably was to do with Walton Forest, or my favorite little forest. But I guess I have tried to clarify to most people that have called that they say that, well, we want to make sure that it can never be undone by anyone else when you dedicate something or you give it the strongest possible protection. And I just want to reiterate this tonight. This council, cannot do anything to fetter future councils, so they do have the right to do what they want to in their own time. We can make the rules and regulations as strong as we can, but we have no way of fettering their powers. So I just wanted to get that across. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, mine was on the same line. I too received the call and was sort of looking up some of the items in the Municipal Act about what these powers are. The alternate approval process comes to mind, also known as a counter petition. And again, this is a tool that exists within the Municipal Act. And we can't, when dedicating land, say, and this is a process that can't be used in the futures, because we don't have that ability, as Councillor Reid was saying. That would be setting direction to a future council, which we can't do. So this is in there because it's a procedure. We're being transparent and upfront that this possibility exists, and we just hope that future councils won't be faced with that situation then.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, that is correct. The framework under which that would take place is the community charter, and the community charter says that in order to a dedicated subcommittee may only be done with the approval of the electors, and the section that deals with the approval of electors says it by referendum or alternative approval process. There's nothing that this council can do to fetter a future council in choosing one of those two options. But no matter what decision is made in the future, the electorate has to give their approval. So it is a high level of protection.
This is the high level that we can do today, and to those citizens that are concerned about this ability, that's really an issue to take up with probably provincial government or the people who've put that wording into the Municipal Act. That really requires a change to the Municipal Act to prevent that from ever being used in the future.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You all set? Yep. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The next item, item 12, concerns city centre parking management. This is phase number 3C. Staff recommendations that council direct staff to prepare bylaw amendments to the town centre parking management bylaw 4452 to remove the surface parking lot at 3045 Lincoln Avenue from the list of paid parking lots where the annual passes are permitted to park. And 2, direct staff to increase the fees for annual parking passes from the current fee of $18 per year to $24 per year, and that the fees for replacing any annual permit rise from $5 to $10 as part of the next update of the fees and charges bylaw, which is expected in the fall/winter of 2015.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Reid. Councillor O'Neill.
It's just a short comment. Insofar as some of these, some of this is driven by the arrival. Some of these changes, the need for some of these changes, is driven by the pending arrival of the SkyTrain. I guess we have a little more time now to implement these. I'm referring to page 3, paragraph 4, first line, with the Evergreen ALRT opening in the summer of 2016. Not so fast. It's going to be the autumn now, we heard quite recently from the provincial government. So not quite as pressing of an issue as it was earlier this month. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I'm just wondering how the current pass holders, especially in this particular lot we're talking about, will be notified that they won't be able to renew their pass.
Through the chair, it would be our intention to bring forward those bylaw amendments and give a one-year transition period. These are annual passes. They're issued for 1 year from the date that they're purchased. So we would actually bring the bylaw forward. Once the bylaw was adopted by council, we would notify any new people that are taking permits that they would only be able to park at that lot up to that first anniversary, which would occur prior to the arrival of the Evergreen line.
And these permits, are they all sort of acquired face-to-face, or are they able to get them online, or do you have to come in to buy them?
Through the chair, the permits are available at City Hall, as well as the Pine Tree Community Center and the City Center Aquatic Center. They are acquired directly face-to-face. So we would advise our staff, post notices that this change is coming, and they could then elect. After the date is passed, they could elect to continue to purchase the permit knowing that that date is coming up on that one anniversary, or they could elect not to purchase the permit.
But they'll be specifically told that that permit will not be allowed in this specific lot.
Yes, and we would also likely post signs at the actual parking lot itself as well.
Great, thanks.
Councillor Zarrillo.
Yeah, I wanted to move to separate the two. Just point 2 about the increase in the annual parking pass. I'd like to be able to separate and vote separately for the two.
Yep, they're separate.
Yep, because I do have concerns about raising the current fees at the moment, just with the inconvenience of parking that's happening in the city over the next year and a half. I would rather not, for the tiny change in fees, I'd rather not move that one forward. Thank you.
Okay. Fair enough. Any further discussion? Actually, I'll support the fee increase. That comes down to something like 1 or 2% per year over the 13 years since I think that fee was set at $18, going up to $24 a year. I suspect anyone that uses their vehicle even once a week, about 50 cents a day. So I don't have a particular concern about that, and I think one of my concerns will be that we won't have enough space in the parking lot if we don't have some kind of a fee mechanism to regulate its use by others than those who are using it as patrons of the pool. I worry that we won't be able to regulate who's using it much more than that. So, Councillor, just wait a moment. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. There's only certain people seem to think that this is sort of parking all over the city. It's not. It's only in these specific parking lots, and this one is being phased out. And I think in the next year or two, we're probably going to have to look at phasing out parts of some of the other ones as well. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's not parking all over the city for your parking pass.
No, it's a very limited number of parking lots.
What a lot of people don't understand. So thank you.
No, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll be dividing it. Mr. Clerk.
The two motions have been moved and seconded, and we can just vote on them one at a time.
So before us now is recommendation 1, directing staff to prepare bylaw amendments to remove the surface parking lot at 3045 Linton from the list of paid parking lots where the annual parking passes are permitted. All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. And the second is to direct staff to increase the fee from $18 to $24 per year, and the fee for replacing an annual permit that's lost from 5 to 10. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Zerillo is opposed. The motion carries.
The next item, item 13, is a notice of motion pertaining to school construction on Burke Mountain. The staff recommendations that Council give consideration to the following notice of motion presented by Councillor Hodge and seconded by Councillor Zerillo at the February 2nd regular Council meeting. That Council write a letter requesting that School District 43 staff and trustees hold a public information meeting for the residents of Burke Mountain to provide information about school construction and interim plans for accommodating students at Lee Elementary. As per our procedure bylaw, Councillor Hodge has the privilege to speak first.
Councillor Hodge.
Yes, thank you. At our council meeting 2 weeks ago, we passed a motion calling on the provincial government and the school district to make funding for schools on Burke Mountain a priority, and I had hoped at that time that we could add this request as part of that motion. However, given in the last 2 weeks have passed, this request is now out of context with that letter, and also I understand that within the last couple of days there have been a number of discussions between residents and the school district, and it looks like they are setting something up. So given that, I don't think that we need to proceed with this. Normally I'd suggest that we withdraw the notice of motion, but I understand our procedures don't allow that now at this point. Can we? Or
the motion does belong to the Assembly at this point, but I'm understanding the circumstances. The Assembly could acquiesce or could consent. And so I'll ask if there's any opposition, anyone opposed to the withdrawal of this motion. Seeing none, I'll consider the Assembly as having withdrawn the motion.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. That is the last formal item on this agenda.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Towner to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll now have a public question period on any items on tonight's agenda. Any items on tonight's agenda? Thank you all for coming.
Good night.